40 Facts About Money That Will Help You Sleep. Money is everywhere, yet it's rarely still. It flows between hands, slips through fingers, waits in quiet numbers. But behind the movement is something softer: memory, belief, and human need. This isn't a story of profits or power. It's a gentle walk through how money became what it is, and how, even now, it reflects our quietest hopes. We once traded shells and salt, items with no voice but deep meaning. Value wasn't printed or encrypted. It was agreed upon in silence, in circles, in shared understanding. Even then, money was more than trade. It was trust. And that thread still runs through the crisp edge of a coin and the faded corner of a bill. Not all money is loud. Much of it hums in the background of life. The coin under a child's pillow, the folded bill in a coat pocket, the soft click of a card reader. This series is about those quieter moments, about the shape of money through time, the strange forms it's taken, and the invisible weight it sometimes carries. You'll hear about how silver moved through empires, how coral reefs were once counted, how belief gives paper its power. You'll hear about ancient ledgers, emotional spending, and digital coins made of code and faith. None of it is urgent. It simply is slow, steady, and softly unfolding. Let these facts drift by like a breeze through tall grass. There's no need to memorize, only to feel the shape of things. You are not here to solve money. You are here to listen to its quiet story. And if your eyelids grow heavy along the way, to rest in the calm it leaves behind. Origins and oddities. How money began, strange currencies, and the idea of value. Before numbers lit up screens and banknotes changed hands with a tap, money was simpler, stranger even. It came in shapes and substances you could hold: shells, salt, feathers, metal discs, and woven cloth. Not for wealth, but for balance. Not for profit, but for trade. These early currencies whispered of community, survival, and trust. Every object we once called money carried a story. Stones carved with care, beads passed down for generations, a paper promise scribbled by candlelight. Each piece was a quiet agreement between people, something we chose to believe in together, and somehow that belief held. This part begins at the beginning, with the odd and beautiful ways people first created value. You'll wander through marketplaces that no longer exist, listen to coins that no longer speak, and pause at turning points where imagination quietly gave birth to economy. There's no rush, just the soft rhythm of discovery. Shells, salt, and story. The first currencies we carried. Long before wallets and banks, money came from the sea. Cowrie shells, smooth and curved like the curl of a smile, were once among the most treasured forms of currency. They jingled in trade routes and echoed in marketplaces. Their value wasn't in rarity alone, but in the trust they carried from one hand to another. Salt once held the power of gold, not just for flavor, but for survival. In ancient times, salt preserved food, healed wounds, and even paid wages. Roman soldiers received salarium, a word that gave us salary. Money was not yet numbers, it was usefulness, traded with care. In parts of Africa and Asia, colorful beads told entire economies. Tiny glass pieces passed through generations, not just as decoration, but as currency. Each strand had meaning. A necklace might feed a village or bind a promise. Beads weren't loud, they glowed softly with memory. On the island of Yap, money stood still. Massive stone discs, some taller than a person, were placed in front of homes to mark wealth. No one moved them. Everyone simply remembered who owned which one. Value was invisible, but trusted. It stayed where it was, like a shared story. Feathers, cocoa beans, whale teeth. Many things have stood in for money. What they had in common wasn't shape or size, but meaning. People saw value in what helped them live or in what reminded them of beauty. The object mattered less than the belief behind it. In the Americas, wampum, belts made of shell beads, told stories and sealed agreements. Each belt held history, memory, and truth. They weren't just payments, they were conversation. When people traded wampum, they were speaking in a language of care. The earliest money didn't just buy things, it bonded people. It reminded them that needs were shared, and trust could be carried in a pouch. There were no stock markets or credit scores, just things you could see, hold, and pass gently into someone else's palm. These early currencies changed slowly. They moved at the pace of footsteps and caravans. Some were lost in rivers or buried in time. Others remain in museums or family stories. They remind us that value is not always loud. Sometimes it lives in silence. When we look at today's money, we forget it began with salt, shells, and feathers. But the essence remains. All money is belief. We still agree something is worth something. We still trade care for care, just with different tools. Let this chapter settle with you like dust on an old shelf. These ancient forms of wealth may be forgotten by history books, but they still echo in the quiet corners of how we trade, trust, and take care of each other. The weight of trade, why barter wasn't enough. Imagine trying to trade a chicken for a clay pot or a basket of grain for a woolen cloak. Barter worked until it didn't. When values didn't match or when needs didn't line up, the system began to wobble. The world needed something quieter, something in between. Barter depended on timing. You had to want what someone else had exactly when they had it. But life wasn't always that simple. People needed a bridge, something both sides could agree on, even if their needs were different. As villages grew into towns, and towns into trade centers, barter couldn't stretch far enough. Cattle didn't fit in pockets, grain could spoil. The world needed smaller promises, something that didn't rot or wander. That's when people began to agree on symbols, tokens, beads, or pieces of metal that held meaning beyond their form. They weren't food or shelter, but they could become those things if both sides believed. These early currencies were more than convenient. They were memory. They remembered your labor, even when your hands were empty. They held value like a gentle echo, following you into the next trade. Barter had been personal. you knew who gave you what. But money could move through strangers across borders. It allowed people to meet without history and still walk away with something fair. With trade expanding along rivers and oceans, consistency became important. Traders needed to know that what they received could be used again. This was the first quiet foundation of trust and currency. The earliest forms of money didn't erase barter. They grew out of it. People didn't stop exchanging goods. They just found a lighter way to carry their worth. Barter is still with us in small corners, a favor for a favor, a service for a smile. But currency gave us something else. It gave us the freedom to move value through time. Trade needed something smoother than bartering. It found it in small shapes, trusted meanings, and shared silence. And slowly, people learn to carry their needs without always carrying the goods themselves. What made gold special? Metal, myths, and shine. Gold is soft, but it endures, it doesn't rust, it doesn't fade. It catches light in a way that stirs something ancient. For thousands of years, people saw more than metal. They saw beauty, permanence, and quiet power. Unlike grain or cattle, gold couldn't feed you. It couldn't warm you, but people still wanted it. It was rare, but not too rare. Soft enough to shape, shiny enough to notice, useful yet mysterious. Long before gold became money, it was sacred. It lined tombs and temples. It crowned kings. It wasn't just wealth. It was a whisper from the earth, a glint that made people pause. When empires rose, gold traveled with them, along desert routes, across mountain passes, under sails. It was melted, stamped, passed through countless hands, but it was never forgotten. Gold became a language, a way to measure worth across cultures. A Roman coin could be recognized far from Rome. The metal itself was the message. Myths formed around it. Golden apples, golden cities, golden rules. It was always more than useful, it was enchanted. And maybe that's why it worked, because people believed in its shine. Gold coins didn't just carry weight. They carried stories of battles, of royalty, of trade, each one a little echo of the world it passed through. Even today, gold remains a symbol. Banks hold it, brides wear it, vaults protect it. It's no longer our everyday money, but it still reminds us of value that doesn't vanish. In the quiet shimmer of gold, people saw a kind of promise, a soft, glowing trust that could be carried, shaped, and saved. A reminder that sometimes beauty itself can hold value. Coins with faces, power printed in metal. The first coins were more than money, they were declarations. Tiny circles of metal, stamped with faces and symbols, carry the weight of power in the palm of a hand. When rulers printed their image on a coin, it wasn't just to decorate. It was to remind, this is who leads, this is who protects, this is who you owe. Coins became messengers. They told stories of emperors, victories, and borders. A coin could travel farther than a decree. It was a ruler's voice, carried through markets and time. Before printing presses, before television, a coin was the most public image. It was how people met their leader, even if they never saw them in person. Coins with faces did more than inform. They created trust. If a ruler's image was there, the coin had value. If the coin was accepted, the ruler's reach was real. Sometimes old coins were melted down to erase one face and replace it with another. The metal stayed, but the message changed. Power could shift, but the coin kept circulating. The weight and purity of the coin mattered, too. People would bite coins not for taste, but to test them. The metal had to be honest, just like the image it bore. In ancient Greece and Rome, coins became art. The details were careful, a curl of hair, the gaze of a god. These tiny portraits weren't just tools. They were miniature sculptures. Over time, coins told more than who ruled. They told what a society valued. Olive branches, lions, ships, stars, every detail meant something placed with quiet purpose. Today's coins still carry faces, presidents, poets, monarchs. The message is gentler now, but still there. Every time you hold one, you hold a little echo of history and identity. Paper that promised, early banks and belief systems. A thin sheet of paper can feel light in the hand, but heavy in meaning. Early paper money wasn't just a tool, it was a promise, a quiet agreement between trust and value. The first paper currencies appeared in China over 1,000 years ago. Metal was scarce and carrying coins became difficult, so people turned to printed notes backed by belief and sealed by authority. A banknote, in its earliest form, was a kind of letter. It said, "I owe you," but more than that, it asked, "Do you trust me?" It worked because people agreed to believe. In medieval Europe, merchant banks used written notes to settle long-distance trades. Gold didn't have to cross oceans anymore, just words on paper, moving between hands that understood the code. These early banks were often built in temples or trusted halls, because money, at its core, required something sacred, faith, not in the paper, but in the system behind it. As paper spread, it took on symbols, seals, stamps, and signatures, each one a soft anchor of trust. People learned to read value not in metal weight, but in ink and mark. A paper note was easier to carry, but not easier to believe in. There were risks. Fires could burn them. Forgers could fake them, but still they grew. Over time, the paper became stronger, more detailed, more protected. And yet the real strength stayed invisible. It rested in the quiet belief that it could be exchanged for something real. What began as a solution to heavy coins became a philosophy. That money didn't need to be shiny, it just needed to be shared, trusted, and carefully made. Paper money, like a whispered promise, depends on memory and meaning. It moves gently through hands, carrying not metal, but mutual belief. Money that rotted, unstable currencies, and lessons. Not all money holds steady. Some currencies grow soft with time. not from wear, but from weakness. When value slips, even money can begin to rot. In post-war Germany, people carried wheelbarrows of paper to buy bread. Prices had sprinted ahead. While the currency collapsed beneath them, notes became cheaper than firewood. In Zimbabwe, at its worst, $1 trillion bill could not buy a meal. Zeros piled up, confidence drained away. The numbers grew louder, but their meaning faded. A stable currency needs more than print. It needs discipline and care. When too much money floods the system, its value spreads thin, like paint across too wide a wall. History has shown us that trust can vanish fast. What was valuable yesterday becomes laughable today. People return to barter, to coins, to anything more solid than collapsing paper. Sometimes the problem isn't inflation, but erosion. A corrupt system, poor planning, or sudden fear. When belief disappears, money stops being useful. It becomes just paper, without the promise. During crises, people have turned to strange replacements, cigarettes, shells, bottles of oil, not because they're official, but because they're believed. Value is wherever faith settles. Unstable currencies are more than financial lessons. They're emotional ones. They remind us how fragile trust can be, and how essential that trust is to every purchase. Governments have learned to guard stability like a delicate thread. They print carefully, they control supply. They speak with caution because confidence is quiet and hard to win back once lost. When money rots, it teaches, it whispers about balance, about belief, and about the deep, invisible cords that hold economies and people together. The ghost of inflation when prices quietly rise. Inflation doesn't knock, it tiptoes, a few cents here, a quiet shift there. The same groceries, a little more expensive. The same paycheck, stretched a little thinner. At first, it's barely noticed. A bus fare changes, a cup of coffee nudges higher. But slowly, gently, the rhythm shifts, value moves, like sand beneath your feet. Inflation is not always bad. A little inflation means a growing economy. It encourages movement. Not hoarding, it rewards spending. But too much, and the balance breaks. Some call it a silent thief because it takes from savings without ever touching the bank. A dollar that slept well yesterday wakes up weaker today. Over time, inflation reshapes plans. It changes how people save, how they spend, and what they expect. It presses on the future, nudging goals a little farther away. Economists watch it like the sky. They measure trends, adjust policies, and use calm voices to manage fear. Because fear, like inflation, can spread fast. In hyperinflation, the ghost becomes a storm. Money runs ahead of itself. Prices race. Paychecks shrink in real time. It's rare, but remembered. Most of the time, inflation floats quietly. It can be managed. It can be guided. But it reminds us that value is always shifting, like light through clouds. What keeps inflation soft is stability. Trust in policy, balance in supply, confidence in tomorrow. Without these, even small increases can feel like pressure. Inflation, at its core, is a measure of movement. It reminds us that money isn't still. It breathes, it reacts, and it carries our hopes gently into the future. When rocks were riches, yap stones had cultural value. On a small island in Micronesia, wealth doesn't fit in your pocket. It rests quietly in the forest, carved from limestone, too heavy to carry, yet everyone knows who owns each one. These are the rice stones of Yap, circular, with a hole in the center. Some are small enough to lift. Others are taller, and a person. All are considered valuable. Their worth isn't measured by weight, but by history, where the stone came from, who risked the journey to fetch it, what stories it carries. Each transaction is remembered, not recorded. When ownership changes, the stone doesn't always move. It might stay where it's always been, but the village knows. It now belongs to someone new, a shared mental ledger. In Yap, value lives in memory, not in banks or paper, but in community. A culture where money is part of storytelling, woven into daily life with quiet respect. These stones aren't spent, only transferred. They mark marriages, alliances, peace agreements, each one a symbol, each one a weightless weight, because belief does the lifting. Travelers once marveled at how a people could use something so impractical, but to Yapese culture, practicality was never the point, meaning was. The stones reflect a slower world, one where value isn't about speed or convenience. It's about care, tradition, and mutual understanding. Some stones now lie underwater, lost in storms or accidents, yet they still count, still remembered, ownership intact, value undisturbed by distance or depth. Yap reminds us that money is more than material. It's memory, story, and quiet consensus. Sometimes the heaviest currency is the one you never have to hold. Imaginary wealth, credit, debt, and trust. Most of the money in the world doesn't exist. Not in coins or notes, it floats quietly in systems of credit. Invisible, yet powerful, a shared imagination that we treat as real. Credit is a promise forward, debt is a memory backward. Both rely on trust that tomorrow will come, that agreements will be honored, that numbers will be enough. The earliest credit was simple, a neighbor lending grain, a merchant allowing delayed payment, not because of contracts, but because of relationship. Trust was the currency. Over time, credit expanded. Banks took on the role of trust holder. They lent money they didn't have based on faith that it would return, and most of the time it did. Debt, too, grew, from a whispered favor to a formal record. Some people carried debt their entire lives, not always as a burden, but as part of a continuous exchange. Imaginary wealth sounds fragile, but in many ways it's resilient. It adapts, it flows, it bends to the rhythms of need and repayment. Problems arise when trust breaks, when loans are given without care, or when promises are too big to keep. Then the imaginary becomes dangerous, cracks appear in the system. Still, credit has built cities, funded ideas. enabled futures that would have been unreachable without belief in what isn't yet real. Credit and debt are like breathing, in and out, expansion and contraction. Neither good nor bad on their own, they reflect the rhythm of how we live together. In a quiet way, imaginary wealth teaches us something ancient, that money doesn't have to be seen to be felt. It only has to be trusted. The first ledgers, clay tablets, and accounting roots. Before money had faces or paper had promises, there were marks on clay. In ancient Mesopotamia, people pressed symbols into tablets to keep track of goods, trade, and time. These were the first ledgers, lists of grain, animals, labor, carefully recorded by scribes. They didn't just track what was owned, but who owed what and when. Early writing itself may have been born from accounting, not poetry or stories, but numbers, the quiet beginnings of civilization written in careful strokes. These clay records were durable. Some still exist today, holding centuries-old transactions that echo with the soft sound of order and routine. Temples and storehouses kept the tablets, not just for control, but for memory, a record that could outlast arguments, distance, or time. These ancient accountants were historians. Their job was to notice, to preserve, and to maintain balance, not just of items, but of relationships. Tokens were often sealed in clay envelopes, the outside marked with a summary. It was an early receipt, a way to double-check value. Simple, but effective. Ledgers eventually moved from clay to papyrus, then to parchment, then to books. But the core remained the same, a place where memory and math quietly met. Today's spreadsheets and databases are descendants of those early tablets, more complex, more hidden, but built on the same desire to know what is and what was given. The first ledgers remind us that money isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a soft record of lives lived, trades made, and trust honored. Movement and memory. How money travels, sticks, and stores the past. Money moves, but not always in straight lines. It travels across oceans and borders, through pockets and hands, carried by belief more than by weight. Its movement is both physical and invisible, quiet ripples that shape economies, stories, and lives without a sound. Yet money doesn't just go forward. It remembers. Coins bear the marks of time. Bills pass through generations. A number in an account holds echoes of effort, loss, and quiet hope. With each exchange, money collects meaning, not just value. In this part, we follow the journey of money, how it shifts from shells to systems, from silence to stock markets, and how, even in motion, it keeps a memory, anchored by those who carried it, traded it, and trusted it along the way. The silk that carried silver, trade routes and currency flows. The Silk Road was not a single road, but a network, a soft web stretched between empires. Along it, traders moved silk, spices, stories, and silver. These weren't rushed caravans. They were slow, deliberate journeys crossing deserts and mountains with quiet purpose. Silver, especially from Spanish mines in the Americas, found its way to China not all at once, but in small waves. It shimmered in saddlebags and ship holds, quietly converting into silks, porcelain, and tea. The East wanted silver, and the West wanted everything else. It wasn't just goods being traded. It was value. Cultures trusted different things. While one society valued cloth, another prized metal. The Silk Road was not just about transport. It was about translation, finding a shared language of worth. This movement of money helped shape early global trade, and yet the people moving it weren't always merchants. Sometimes they were monks, messengers, or even fugitives. Each carried something precious, woven into the larger pattern. Silver traveled far because it held weight in both senses. It was physically dense, but also symbolically rich. Empires didn't just collect silver. They absorbed the power it represented. To have silver meant to have reach. Traders didn't hoard wealth. They flowed with it. From the salt roads of Africa to the incense trails of Arabia, money took the paths of least resistance. Geography shaped value, and value shaped maps. In each stop along the way, silver paused, briefly becoming someone's security or someone's hope. A coin held for years, a necklace buried for safety, a payment for peace. These moments gave money its memory. As silk moved east to west and silver west to east, they passed through markets that were more than noisy bazaars. These were living archives, places where belief turned into barter and barter into balance. Even pirates and smugglers, often whispered about more than seen, played roles in this trade. Not all wealth traveled with permission. Some slipped through shadows, yet still shaped economies just the same. Today, we remember the Silk Road as a distant dream, but in its soft footsteps lies the pattern of our modern world, where money still moves through unseen networks, crossing borders without needing to speak. Banks that were temples, trust built in stone. In the earliest cities, where markets buzzed and coins clinked, money needed a place to rest. That place became the temple, not just a house of prayer, but of safekeeping, where offerings met accounting, and trust began to harden into habit. People believed gods watched over their wealth. Gold stored beside altars wasn't just protected by walls, but by fear, reverence, and ritual. A deposit wasn't merely financial, it was spiritual. Stone sanctuaries became the first vaults. Priests became the first bankers, balancing ledgers with offerings, managing loans with oaths. Their role wasn't to profit, but to preserve. They knew that money's real strength wasn't in metal, but in trust. Over time, this divine guardianship turned practical. Temples kept records, weighed silver, and offered stability in a world of shifting rulers. When kingdoms rose and fell, the temple stayed, its walls holding not just relics, but receipts. The architecture mattered, thick columns, tall gates, cool shadows. These spaces made money feel safe, not because of what was inside, but because of what they symbolized, permanence. Eventually, temples gave way to secular banks, but the design stayed similar, marble lobbies, guarded vaults, long counters, each element whispering the same old promise: your money safe here. Even the word bank came from old benches where money changers once sat. These were public, visible, and sturdy, just like the institutions they inspired. In quiet corners of old cities, some temples still stand, long emptied of coins, but echoing with history. Their floors remember footsteps, their walls the weight of centuries of trust. Today's banks may hum with technology and glass, but their origins remain spiritual, not in faith to a god, but in belief in a system. And belief, like wealth, gathers strength in numbers. Stone and silence once held fortunes, now it's servers and screens. But the core is the same, a place where people store hope, value, and the quiet wish that it will still be there tomorrow. The invention of interest, time, risk, and return. At some point, someone asked for more than just their money back, not because they were greedy, but because they were patient. Thus, interest was born, quietly, like a ripple in a still pool. Interest began as a way to price time. If you lent a sack of grain, you waited through seasons. That wait had a cost, and the cost became the extra handful returned with thanks or obligation. Risk was another part of it. Lending was never guaranteed. Crops failed, roads crumbled, debtors disappeared. Interest became the soft cushion against uncertainty, woven from worrying and trust. In early societies, laws regulated how much was fair. Too much interest was called usury, seen not just as greedy, but as dangerous. Money could grow, but not too fast. It had to mimic nature, slow, seasonal, reasonable. Religions weighed in. Some banned interest entirely. Others allowed it in moderation. The idea of making money from money made people uneasy. It felt like harvesting without planting. But over time the world changed. Merchants needed capital. Builders needed backers. Cities needed systems. And interest, once a whisper, became a structure, built into loans, bonds, and every modern mortgage. Interest taught money to stretch into the future, to not just reflect the present, but to predict it. A simple percentage began shaping choices, timelines, and dreams. It also shaped inequality. Those with money could earn without lifting a hand. Those without borrowed and repaid again. Time, it seemed, was not equally priced for everyone. And yet, interest became a tool, not just of profit, but of possibility. It let ideas become buildings, hopes become businesses. It gave value to the invisible, time itself. Now every account, loan, and investment carries echoes of this ancient idea. Money waiting quietly, expecting to return, slightly heavier than it left. Paper across borders, colonialism, and borrowed wealth. Paper money, once trusted only within its birthplace, began to cross borders, not because it was strong, but because its holders were. Empires printed, declared, and distributed, and money obeyed. Colonial powers brought more than guns and flags. They brought their currencies, pressing them into palms, marketplaces, and mines. In places where shells, beads, or barter once ruled, new paper became law. This money was often backed by nothing local. It held the image of a distant monarch or a symbol no one asked for. Still, it bought food, it paid taxes, and slowly it replaced. Local economies shifted, not by choice, but by necessity. Colonial money funded railways, mines, and ports, but also carried away resources, interest, and silence. Wealth moved outward while paper remained behind. People adapted. They learned to trade into systems, the one they knew and the one they had to trust. Sometimes they resisted, other times they folded into the new flow, surviving within the limits. Debt also crossed oceans. Colonies borrowed under rules they didn't write, with terms that didn't bend. Paper arrived as loans. Repayments flowed out as labor, crops, and gold. Even after flags changed, the money often stayed. Systems built to serve empires became national standards, and the interest, both financial and historical, lingered like dust on ledgers. Today, currencies still carry history. Some borders use money designed by former rulers. Some economies still repay ancient debts, and some values, both literal and symbolic, never fully reset. Paper seems light, easy to fold, easy to forget, but it's heavy with context. Every note tells a story, not just of what it can buy, but of where it came from. Money moves quietly, but it leaves a trail, across oceans, through empires, into pockets, and behind it a record of whose wealth grew and whose was borrowed without asking. War and worth, money made in crisis. War changes many things, including the value of money. In times of crisis, what was once stable begins to bend. Governments print, people hoard, and trust shifts from coin to survival. During war, metal becomes too valuable to mint, coins melt into bullets. Paper floods markets, not because there's wealth, but because there's fear. The more uncertain the future, the more money loses its meaning. Soldiers were sometimes paid in promises, notes handed out, stamped with urgency, expected to be honored later. In the moment, they were hope. After the war, some became collectibles, others forgotten scraps. War bonds asked civilians to lend to their country. Posters promised victory in return for savings. It was a quiet contract. Give now, and believe it will be returned with interest and peace. In occupied territories, new currencies were forced into use, often without consent. These notes tried to rewrite economies, asserting control with every transaction. Buying bread became an act under surveillance. Inflation often followed, not the slow, creeping kind, but the sudden, soaring type. A loaf of bread could double in price overnight. People stopped counting money, they counted meals instead. Yet, even in war, money kept moving. Markets formed in ruins, barter reappeared. People found ways to exchange, not just goods, but care. Small kindnesses filled the gaps between collapsed currencies. After the fighting ended, rebuilding included restoring trust. New notes were printed, old debts were weighed. Some economies recovered slowly, as if learning to breathe again. But war left its mark, not just in ruins, but in currencies. Some bills still carry wartime symbols. Some coins were never recalled. Silent reminders that value is fragile when peace is not. Money during war is never just economic, it's emotional. It reflects fear, sacrifice, and resilience. In crisis, it becomes both less and more than we thought it was. Coins that change hands, currency in everyday life. Every coin tells a story, not just of kings or countries, but of hands, worn edges, faded faces. These are marks of movement. Tiny travelers pass between pockets, markets, and lives. Long ago, coins weren't just money. They were tools. Some were shaved to make change, others pierced and worn as jewelry. People carried them not just for value, but for presence. Coins clinked in every kind of place, street stalls, temples, taverns. Their sound became familiar, a rhythm of trade, of daily trust, a promise that this metal, once given, would be accepted. Some coins had holes to tie them together. Others were square, heavy, or oddly shaped. Design wasn't just aesthetic, it shaped how people used, stored, and counted their worth. Children often got their first lessons in money through coins, a gift for chores, a trade for candy, a token of independence, small and heavy in the palm. In every era, coins reflected power. Emperors put their faces on them, cities engraved symbols. Even the simplest penny spoke of nation, time, and intention. During shortages, people reused old coins or made do with substitutes. In some towns, local tokens acted like money until the real thing returned. The shift from coin to paper, and later to digital, didn't erase their importance. Coins still circulate, still clink, still wait at the bottom of drawers or fountain pools. And even when forgotten, coins remain patient. Found decades later, they carry weight, not just in metal, but in memory. They whisper of hands long gone. In the quiet night, a single coin resting on a table tells more than its value. It speaks of exchange, of movement, of lives touched in passing. Money is memory. What we spend tells a story. Every transaction is a quiet note in your story, not just what you bought, but when and why. Money keeps a memory of your life, even when you don't. Receipts pile up in drawers, bank statements tell phases, late nights, new jobs, lost months. In the silence of numbers, a biography forms. We remember gifts we gave more than things we kept. Money spent on others lingers longer in the heart. It's not the amount, but the intention behind the giving. Travel leaves a trail in currency, bills from other countries tucked in books or wallets. Small denominations, not exchanged, but kept as souvenirs of a different place and pace. Even digital purchases hold echoes. Subscriptions you forgot, an audiobook you loved, a donation made in a moment of empathy. These moments stick, even if the digits fade. Debt, too, tells a story. It speaks of reaching, of risk, of trying. It carries weight, but also hope. that tomorrow will provide what today could not. Money spent on comfort, warm meals, soft beds, small luxuries, marks how we care for ourselves. These are not indulgences, they're affirmations that we're still here, still trying. Some purchases change us, a course that opened a new path, a tool that shaped a habit. Money, at its best, doesn't just buy, it builds. There's a reason we save old wallets. Even when empty, they hold more than cash. They hold years, passes, notes, snapshots of we were quietly zipped in leather. Your money doesn't just move, it remembers, and in its movement, it gently tells the story of a life made meaningful by small, daily choices. The rise of national currencies, symbols of identity. Money began to carry more than value. It began to carry identity. A nation's face appeared on notes. Emblems and flags emerged not just from politics, but from printing presses. National currencies help unify economies. Instead of scattered coins from local lords, people used one system. A common note meant shared trust and shared belonging. Designs were not random. Every bird, bridge, or hero on a bill was chosen carefully. What a nation valued was pressed into paper and etched into coin. Crisis often called for a new currency after war, after independence, after change. Nations printed afresh. The birth of a bill meant a chance to start over. Holding a note became an act of loyalty, spending it a gesture of participation. Nations didn't just issue money, they asked citizens to believe in it. Currency reform wasn't always smooth. Some transitions happened overnight. Old notes voided, new ones introduced with uncertain value. People lined up, confused, hopeful, or afraid. But in time, national currencies shaped rhythm and ritual. People learned what each bill meant. Small ones for daily bread, large ones for rent. Familiar folds, trusted tones. Collectors often keep old notes not for their worth, but for what they represent. A lost country, a moment in history, a feeling that time once held. Today, as cash gives way to screens, these designs still matter. Even digital money carries the marks of national pride, logos, names, colors that whisper home. A currency is more than a tool. It is a quiet flag in your pocket. It tells the story of where you are and who you are a part of. Currency that disappeared, defunct money, and what it left. Not all money lasts. Some currencies vanish quietly, replaced or forgotten, yet they leave behind soft echoes, folded into the memories of people who once used them. The Deutschmark, the lira, the franc, they all had their time. Their notes were once symbols of stability, tucked into wallets, passed between hands, counted in markets. When a currency ends, it doesn't vanish immediately. It lingers in drawers and old cash registers in memory. People remember what they could once buy with it. Sometimes currencies collapse from inflation. Bills so devalued they're used as wallpaper, not payment. A banana costing billions, a paycheck spent before prices rise again. Other times, currency is replaced by unification. The euro brought many countries under one coin. It was both progress and nostalgia. People miss their old notes even as they move forward. Collectors value defunct money for its design and history. A note from a vanished country is a postcard from the past, a soft reminder that nothing is permanent. For some, these changes brought hardship, confusion at the exchange, savings wiped out. But for others, new currencies meant hope, a new system, a chance to rebuild trust. Currency, even when gone, remains in photos and stories, and the rustling sound of a box filled with old coins that no longer spend, but still speak. We rarely notice when the last transaction happens with an old note. It's just one more moment in time, but in hindsight, it becomes a farewell. The life of money is like our own. It has beginnings, uses, and endings. And even after it's gone, it leaves something behind, the trace of belief. The silent pulse of exchange, markets, networks, and flow. Money moves, even when we don't see it. Beneath every city, every country flows an invisible rhythm, a quiet heartbeat made of trades, transfers, and trust. Markets aren't just places, they're systems, conversations between buyers and sellers, needs and offerings. Even in silence, the exchange continues, unseen but constant. In the past, exchanges were loud, voices shouting prices, hands waving deals. Now, much of it happens on screens. Silent taps replace the sound of coins falling. Money doesn't sleep. Even as you rest, trades occur across time zones. A stock bought in Tokyo, a currency exchange in London, a pulse that never pauses. The digital age turned money into light, information. It travels at speed across cables and servers. Value measured not in weight, but in numbers and code. But beneath the speed is something older, the need to connect. Markets are built on trust, on the idea that what you give will be met with something fair. Even small markets echo this. A farmer stole a local shop, a quiet deal between neighbors. Exchange is about more than profit. It's about understanding. Economists chart this pulse with lines and graphs. But most people feel it differently. Through rising prices, job offers, bills due. Quiet signals that speak of movement. When things go wrong, crash, recessions, shortages, the silence becomes tense. But over time, the flow finds its rhythm again. Money adapts, people adapt, the pulse resumes. To sleep is to step back from this flow, to let it move without you for a while, and to wake gently into a world still quietly trading, still softly breathing. Belief and behavior, psychology, emotion, and what money means to us. Money is not just a tool. It's a mirror. It reflects what we fear, what we hope for, and what we think we need. Beneath numbers and notes, there's feeling, a quiet pulse of emotion that shapes how we spend, save, and share. Some see money as safety, others feel guilt, pride, or even shame attached to it. It's not always rational. Sometimes we hold on too tight. Sometimes we let go too quickly. Behind every transaction, there's a story the numbers don't tell. This part is about those quiet stories, the beliefs we carry, often without knowing, the behaviors shaped by memory and meaning, and how, in the calm of reflection, we can begin to understand what money really means to us, softly, without judgment. Why we believe in paper, shared myths of value. The money in your pocket is only paper, thin, printed, and mostly meaningless on its own, but it buys food, pays rent, and holds power. Why? Because we agree it does. That agreement, silent and collective, is the real currency. Centuries ago, people traded beads, shells, and feathers. None were especially rare or useful, but belief made them valuable. The idea of worth was passed from one hand to another, growing stronger with every trade. Paper money works the same way. It's not backed by gold anymore. It's backed by trust. Trust in governments and systems and in each other. A promise printed in ink, folded into wallets and carried with care. We rarely question it. A slip of paper buys bread, and we move on. But beneath that moment is a quiet miracle, a shared myth we all live by. It works not because of what the paper is, but because of what we all believe it represents. Even when money moves digitally through cards or phones, the belief stays intact. Numbers on a screen, changing by touch, still hold weight. The physical paper is fading, but the faith behind it is not. Children learn early that money matters. They're told to save it, earn it, respect it. Long before they understand systems or economies, they inherit belief, not in the object, but in its invisible meaning. Every bill you've ever held has passed through many hands. Each person accepted it, trusted it, spent it. That invisible chain of belief stretches back generations. It is one of the most successful ideas humans have ever shared. Sometimes belief breaks. In times of crisis, paper can become worthless. But when belief holds, even the plainest note can carry dignity, freedom, and peace of mind, not because of what it is, but because of what it means. We don't see this agreement. We feel it in the comfort of a paid bill, in the security of a saved note, in the worrying of not having enough. Money doesn't just buy things, it quietly carries emotion. And so we believe in paper, not blindly, but quietly. We believe because others do, and that belief, wrapped in silence, fuels the world while we sleep. Saving for someday, the promise of security. Saving is an act of quiet hope. When you set aside money, you're making a soft promise to your future self, not for now, but for later, someday, when the unknown becomes real. Coins in a jar, numbers in a bank account, they all hold the same whisper, you might need this, and in that whisper is comfort, a way of softening tomorrow's worries before they arrive. People save for many reasons, emergencies, dreams, rest, or safety. Behind each reason is the same thought, the future is coming, and I want to be ready. That readiness brings peace. Saving is not just about money, it's about time. It's storing today's effort for tomorrow's needs. It's choosing to pause, to wait, to believe in the value of patience. Even small savings matter. A single coin set aside still holds the shape of intention. It says, "Not yet," and in a world that moves quickly, that kind of pause is powerful. Cultures across history have honored saving. From granaries filled with grain to vaults filled with gold, people have always sought ways to prepare. Saving is one of humanity's oldest instincts. Sometimes we save and never spend. The act alone can be enough. It tells us we've thought ahead, that we've planted something small in the soil of the future. To save is to breathe a little easier. It softens the edge of uncertainty. It may not solve everything, but it offers a cushion, a calm place for your worries to land. And so we save, not out of fear, but out of care, for ourselves, for others, for the soft promise that someday, when the time comes, we will be okay. What we pay for, values and spending. Every dollar you spend is a decision. You're not just buying things, you're revealing your values. What matters most to you often hides quietly in your receipts. A meal shared, a gift given, a quiet night at home. These small purchases reflect big priorities. They show what brings you joy, comfort, and peace. Some people spend on beauty, others on safety. Some choose experience over objects. Each spending choice draws a soft outline of the life we want to live. Money doesn't just go away when it's spent. It moves, it signals. It supports businesses, ideas, communities. Your choices help shape what continues and what fades. Sometimes we spend to solve problems. Other times, to feel better. Spending isn't always rational. It's emotional, instinctive, and deeply human. A cup of coffee in the morning may seem small, but it can carry warmth, routine, and a sense of care. In spending, we nourish more than our needs. Not all spending feels good. Regret often follows impulse. But even regret teaches us what we truly value, what matters enough to spend, and what doesn't. Tracking what you spend reveals a quiet diary. Over time, it becomes a story of priorities, changes, and quiet shifts in what you need. When we spend mindfully, the feeling is different. It's calm, clear, and satisfying. It's knowing that your money matched your values and that alignment brings peace. The price of status, identity, and currency. Money is not just used, it's seen. It can become a mirror, reflecting how we want to be perceived. Through it, we shape an identity that others can notice. Luxury items, brand names, rare things, these carry more than function. They signal status. Quietly or loudly, they tell a story about success, taste, or belonging. Status spending isn't new. Ancient kings wore golden robes, and traders flaunted rare spices. Across time, people have always used wealth to show place and pride. Today, the signals have changed, but the intent remains. From sleek gadgets to eco-conscious brands, money helps build the image we wish to share. For some, this is expression. For others, it's pressure, the need to keep up, to prove worth, and turn spending into a quiet competition. But identity is layered. Not all status is loud. A well-worn book, a handmade coat, a locally grown meal, these too can speak of values and quiet wealth. When money becomes tied to image, it risks becoming hollow. What once brought joy might now only bring expectation. That's when peace can start to fade. Yet status itself isn't wrong. It's natural to want to be seen, respected, and understood. Money just becomes the language we use to tell that story. Reflecting on what status means to you can soften its grip. Is it connection, confidence, creativity when you know you can choose more gently? And in that choice is power, not the kind others see, but the kind you feel. The calm kind, the kind that lets you rest, quietly whole in who you are. When giving feels richer, generosity and emotional wealth. Giving is one of money's softest powers. When we offer what we have to someone else, it stretches beyond numbers. It becomes warmth, care, and connection. A gift doesn't have to be large. Even a small gesture can feel like abundance when it's wrapped in sincerity. Generosity is measured not by size, but by spirit. We often think money leaves us when we give it away, but in many cases, it circles back as peace, pride, or a gentle sense of purpose. Across cultures and centuries, giving has been a sign of strength. It says, I have enough, and more quietly I see your need. Some people give in secret, others give with ceremony. Whether loud or quiet, the act of giving builds bridges between people, between moments. There's a kind of joy that only comes from generosity. It lives in the smile of the receiver and lingers in the quiet of the giver's heart. Giving changes the way we see money. It reminds us that value isn't just stored, it's shared. And in that sharing, wealth takes a softer form. Even when we don't feel rich, we often still find a way to give. Time, kindness, help, or hope, these all carry worth beyond any price tag. Some of the most generous people have the least to spare. Their giving speaks of resilience, empathy, and a belief that wealth is not what you keep, but what you offer. When giving feels richer than keeping, money transforms. It becomes more than currency. It becomes connection, stitched quietly into the fabric of who we are. How money shapes time, work, wages, and waiting. Time and money have a quiet relationship. We trade one for the other, often without thinking. Work becomes ours, and ours become pay. The rhythm of a paycheck divides our lives into cycles, weeks, months, hours, each marked by the promise of compensation. We wait, earn, and repeat. For many, time is measured not by a clock, but by value. What's your hour worth? What do you give away when you work? What do you hope to gain? Not all time is paid equally. Some labor is invisible. Caregiving, cleaning, thinking. These quiet tasks often shape the world, yet rarely shape a paycheck. Wages are more than numbers, they reflect worth, recognition, and power. And when they fall short, time can feel undervalued, even stolen. Still, there is dignity in work, whether loud or quiet, seen or unseen. Effort leaves a mark, and money becomes the witness of that effort. Some people are paid to wait, others wait to be paid. This tension shapes entire lives, dreams delayed, opportunities missed, rest postponed. But money also buys time back, a day off, a weekend, a retirement. These soft rewards remind us that money isn't the end, it's the means to peace. When time and money align gently, something beautiful happens. Work feels purposeful, rest feels deserved, and life unfolds without rush. So we work, we wait, we count, but in the quiet spaces between, we remember, time is more than money. It's the shape of our days. The cost of quiet things, nature, care, and invisible labor. Some of the most valuable things don't carry a price. A breeze through the trees, a moment of silence, the care of someone who asks nothing in return. Nature gives without invoice. Trees clean the air. Rivers carry life. The soul grows food. Yet these gifts are often overlooked because they do not demand a fee. Care work, too, is often invisible, raising children, comforting the sick, tending to the old. These acts form the spine of society, yet rarely reflect in bank accounts. The world runs quietly on this unpaid labor. It's in the soft effort of parents, nurses, neighbors, and friends, work done in love, not profit. Because there's no receipt, we forget to count it, but without it, everything else falters. Economy, health, happiness, all rest on these quiet foundations. When nature is harmed or care is ignored, the cost shows up later, in exhaustion, in illness, in grief. Quiet things carry heavy weight when gone. Some try to measure this value, calculate the worth of clean air or the labor of a caregiver, but numbers fall short of capturing such quiet importance. Still, acknowledgement matters. When we see the worth of the unseen, we begin to shift. We learn to cherish the work that doesn't shout. Money isn't always the answer, but it can help support what matters. By funding care, protecting nature, or simply paying attention, we invest in peace. And so the cost of quiet things reminds us, not all value is loud. Some of the richest parts of life ask only to be noticed and gently preserved. Happiness and earning. What the studies actually say. People often ask if money brings happiness. The answer isn't simple, but the research tells a soft story. Up to a point, money helps. After that, the effect quiets. Studies show that once basic needs are met, food, shelter, safety, more income does improve well-being, but only to a limit. Beyond that, gains are small. What matters more than how much you earn is how steady it feels. Stability brings peace. Predictability reduces stress. Security is often more valuable than luxury. Happiness also rises with how you use your money, spending on experiences, not objects, giving, not hoarding. These choices matter more than total income. Comparison clouds the picture. If everyone around you earns more, your contentment may drop, not because you have less, but because you feel behind. Time plays a role too. Money that buys freedom, to rest, to be with family, to create, often brings more joy than any bonus or raise. The pressure to always earn more can wear down the spirit. At some point, chasing money can cost time, health, and peace, the very things it was meant to secure. Happiness and money are partners, but not twins. They walk together only so far. After that, happiness finds other paths: connection, purpose, rest. A rich life doesn't always require a rich bank account. It might only ask for enough, plus a little time and a quiet place to be. So if you've ever wondered whether money makes people happy, the answer is sometimes. But often, what we do with it matters more than how much we hold. Money dreams, aspirations shaped by culture. What we dream about money shape long before we earn any. Family stories and culture whisper early on what money should mean. In some places, wealth is seen as a sign of success. In others, it's a means to care for others. Each dream is a reflection of deeper values. Children hear the tone in their parents' voices when bills arrive. They feel the weight of saving, the excitement of buying, the silence of not enough. Movies, music, and media shape money dreams too. They show what's possible, and sometimes what's unreachable. These images imprint quietly over time. In some cultures, the dream is ownership, a house, a business, a piece of land. In others, it's education, freedom, or time with loved ones. Our money dreams can lift us. They give direction, motivation, and a reason to wake early or work late. But they can also become burdens, if too rigid or unreachable. When people migrate, money dreams shift again. Old hopes mix with new realities. Expectations adjust. Priorities change. And often, gratitude grows for small comforts. Aspirations tied to money are rarely just about cash. They're about identity, dignity, safety, and the hope of something better than yesterday. Over time, dreams evolve. A child's wish for toys becomes an adult's hope for rest. What we want changes, but the feeling behind it often stays the same. So when you think of your money dreams, ask not just what they are, but where they came from. They carry echoes of the people, places, and hopes that shaped you. The fear of not enough, scarcity, and the mind. Scarcity is not just about numbers, it's a feeling, the sense that there's never quite enough of money, time, safety, or rest. This fear often begins early. A childhood without stability can plant a lasting sense of uncertainty, even if resources improve later. The brain responds to scarcity by focusing hard. It becomes alert, sometimes anxious. We plan, calculate, hesitate. It can be useful in crisis, but exhausting over time. When money is tight, Every decision feels heavier. Even small purchases carry more weight. The mental load increases, leaving little room for long-term thinking. This mindset can linger. Even people who now have enough may still feel like it's slipping away. The fear of losing comfort can be stronger than the joy of having it. Yet there is power in naming it. Recognizing scarcity's grip allows us to soften its hold. We begin to ask, is this fear still true or just familiar? Building buffers helps, a savings account, a support system, a predictable routine. These can all soothe the mind and soften the edges of worrying. Compassion helps too. When others act from fear, it's not always about greed. Often, it's about protection, a quiet attempt to feel secure. In the end, the fear of not enough isn't solved by more alone. It's eased by stability, kindness, and a steady reminder you are safe and you're not alone. Future, fiction, and flow. Digital shifts, imagined economies, and what's ahead. The money of tomorrow doesn't yet exist, but we already talk about it, plan for it, and build systems around its imagined shape. In this part, we pause to reflect on the flow of currency, not just through banks and hands, but through belief, code, and change. Some of what we call money now is entirely invisible. It moves as data, settles in seconds, and lives on screens. Other forms are rooted in fiction, shared stories about value, trust, and exchange. These stories are evolving quietly beneath the surface of daily life. As we look ahead, we'll explore how money continues to shift and slip through economies across borders into the digital unknown, not to predict, but to observe softly. The future of money might be fast, but here we take it slow. Let's watch how it breathes. From coin to code, how money went digital. Once money was heavy, it clinked in pouches and dragged at the corners of pockets. Coins were real things, cold to the touch, stamped with kings and creatures. Every transaction was a physical act, a hand to another hand, a moment of presence. Then paper came, lighter, flatter, easier to carry and count. But still, you could feel it. It could crease, tear, flutter in wind. Even checks, though indirect, were something to sign, to fold, to slip into envelopes and mail across towns. But slowly, without alarm, the weight of money vanished. Numbers began living on screens. You didn't hold them. You watched them appear after typing a password or tapping a card. No clinking, no rustling, just a silent flash of approval. Digital money is not one thing. It's credit cards, direct deposits, online transfers. It moves through wires and airwaves, translated into code that flows faster than speech. A balance updates, a purchase completes, and you barely feel it happen. For many, this has made life smoother. No counting change, no ATM runs. You can send money across the world in seconds. Bills pay themselves. Paychecks arrive invisibly. The system hums in the background, like electricity or time. But something subtle has shifted. When money loses its body, it can also lose its meaning. It's easy to forget the effort behind it, to spend faster, to detach. When the tactile becomes abstract, the emotional weight changes too. Yet there's magic in this transition. Imagine a farmer in one country sells a crop, a tap, a code, and a student in another part of the world eats dinner. That invisible thread, once impossible, is now routine. Behind it all, there are servers and signals, encryption and updates. But beneath the tech, it's still trust. Trust that numbers mean something, that your balance is real, that the system, even unseen, still holds. And sometimes in this invisible age, we still reach for something solid, a coin in a drawer, a crisp bill tucked away. Proof, perhaps, that value can still be felt, even when it mostly floats in code. So we drift with money now. We let it pass silently between phones and accounts. We watch numbers blink and trust that they matter. From coin to code, the form has changed. But the quiet exchange continues, humming gently beneath our lives. The currency of attention. Time as a traded good. In the quiet moments of your day, attention flows like water. You choose what to look at, what to listen to, what to care about. That choice is soft, but it carries weight. It builds habits. It shapes your world. Long ago, currency was measured in coins and grain. Now, more often, it's measured in seconds and clicks. Companies don't just want your money, they want your gaze. A moment of focus can be more valuable than $1. Scroll, pause, tap. Each action feeds a system that measures interest. Every ad you watch, every post you linger on, is part of an invisible economy. You're not just spending time, you're spending attention, which is often the same. Your attention is limited like any resource. It can be saved or wasted. What you give your focus to grows, what you ignore fades. Quietly, this becomes a form of investment, one that shapes how you feel, think, and connect. We used to say, pay attention. That phrase carries a truth. Attention is a kind of payment. It has cost, it has value, and once spent, it doesn't come back. That's why it matters where it goes. Some things ask gently for your attention. A sunset, a soft conversation, the turning of pages in a book. Others shout, flash, interrupt. Not all attention is taken equally, and not all returns are the same. In a world of distractions, protecting your attention becomes an act of self-care. Choosing what to watch, choosing when to stop, giving yourself quiet space. These are quiet financial decisions, even if no coins are exchanged. Some platforms profit more from your time than your money. The longer you stay, the more valuable you become. But you are not a number. Your presence isn't a product. It's something softer, something sacred. Each moment is a coin in a new kind of economy. An economy of awareness, a presence of choice. And, like any economy, it reflects what a culture values. So tonight, let your attention rest. Let it return to you. Close the tabs, turn off the lights, and notice your breath. For a while, give yourself back to yourself before another moment slips quietly away. Cryptocurrency whispers, decentralized belief systems. Once money came from kings, then from banks, governments, and steel vaults. But now something new whispers through the wires, a currency with no center, no ruler, no printed bill. Cryptocurrency is not just digital money, it's a belief system made of code, a shared agreement. Like all money, but without a single source, it lives in blocks, chains, and consensus. Bitcoin was the first loud whisper. It offered a promise that money could be free from banks, immune to borders, and trusted not because of power, but because of math. People heard the whisper, and some listened. They mined, traded, held, others doubted. Still the whisper grew louder. Ethereum, Litecoin, countless coins emerged, each with its own story, its own followers, its own quiet hope. At its heart, crypto is a network of faith, not religious, but relational. You believe the system will work because others do. You trust the code, you trust the ledger, you trust the community. Like any currency, it can rise or fall, but unlike traditional money, it isn't printed. It's discovered, solved, agreed upon, a puzzle that unlocks value over and over again. But with new systems come new risks, scams, volatility, lost passwords, digital wallets vanish into silence, and still the whisper continues, reshaping what we think money can be. In some places, crypto brings access where banks never reached. In others, it invites speculation and speed. It is at once revolutionary and fragile, grounded and floating. And yet, it's all made of trust, just like old coins, just like paper bills. The difference is where that trust lives now, not in vaults or gold, but in the quiet code that underlies it all. So tonight, let the market sleep. Let the whisper of the blockchain drift past. The world will still turn, and in the silence another block will form, unseen and felt, but they're all the same. Virtual goods, real value, gaming, NFTs, and ownership. In a pixelated world, someone just bought a sword, not for battle, but for status, not with gold, but with cryptocurrency. It's a sword they can never touch, yet they own it, and it means something. Virtual goods are things you can't hold, but still value. A costume in a game, a digital plot of land, an image, tokenized and unique. Ownership has moved beyond the physical. This shift is not entirely new. People have always valued symbols. A name on a wall, a signature, a story behind an object. Now the symbols just live in data, on screens in code. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, whisper a promise that digital things can be owned, authenticated, and unique. A file becomes more than a copy. It becomes a claim, a record, a quiet flag planted in the cloud. In gaming, virtual items have long held worth. Players trade skins, weapons, outfits, not for survival, but for identity, expression, belonging. Value is shaped not just by rarity, but by meaning. Outside games, virtual art has entered galleries. Collectors buy pieces they will never hang. Their proof of ownership is stored in the blockchain, unchangeable, traceable, real in its own way. Skeptics ask, what are you really buying? But value has always been a mirror. If people believe in the worth of a thing, digital or physical, it becomes true, if only softly. There's beauty in this shift. It opens space for artists, for play, for new economies. But it also invites caution. Hype can blur meaning. Not all digital riches are built to last. Still, the idea remains that even in a world of zeros and ones, we seek connection, identity, and ownership. We want to hold something, even if it lives behind glass. So as you close your eyes tonight, think of the things you carry, not just in hands, but in memory, meaning, and belief. Some of them might be digital, but their impact quietly real. Invisible labor, money behind the screen. Every time you tap, scroll, or ask a question, someone has made that moment possible. Behind every smooth app, every digital checkout is labor you cannot see, quiet, constant, essential. Coders write lines of logic that stitch the world together. Designers shape what you notice and what you don't. Moderators clean what shouldn't be seen. This is the labor behind the screen. In warehouses lit by fluorescent hum, packages move with speed and silence. Somewhere a person wraps a box. Somewhere else the driver plots the route. The internet feels instant, but people make it work. This invisible workforce doesn't wear uniforms. Often they don't sit in offices. They click, type, respond, and watch. Many are paid by the task. Some are paid too little. Others aren't seen at all. Gig work rises with each delivery and ride. Ratings replace bosses. Algorithms assign jobs. Yet, even when work is quiet, it leaves its mark on hands, on minds, on lives. We often say the system handles things, but systems are people, organized, automated, scale. The labor behind the system is what makes convenience feel like magic. Sometimes we forget to count this work. It doesn't leave fingerprints on what we buy, but it fills every corner of the process. It supports the economy we rarely pause to examine. Invisible labor is often gendered, outsourced, or erased. Yet without it, our screens would stay dark. Our orders would not come, the flow would stop. In the quiet of night, as your phone rests beside you, remember, each digital comfort has been touched by someone's unseen effort. Someone else's time made your ease possible. So sleep gently tonight, knowing the world keeps turning. And behind the glow of your screen, many have shaped a quieter kind of wealth. Automated spending, subscriptions, and soft loss. You might not notice it, but money is moving while you sleep. A streaming service renews, a storage plan ticks over. A small charge appears, unnoticed, on your card. This is the world of automated spending, convenient, yes, but quiet, invisible, subtle. It hums in the background, just like the apps it supports. Once we handed over bills, now we subscribe. Monthly, yearly, forever, we exchange decision for ease, memory for automation. No need to choose. Just let it renew. But small losses add up. A forgotten trial becomes a fee. A service you no longer use continues to charge. The money leaks like a soft drip from a tap you never turned off. Automated spending blurs the line between choice and habit. It keeps things running, but not always in your favor. The question becomes, what are you still paying for, and why? There's comfort in knowing everything is taken care of, but there's risk, too. Passive spending can hide priorities. What you support, what you forget, what you ignore. It's not always about waste. Sometimes it's about weight. The weight of decisions you haven't made, of dollars you've handed over without feeling them leave your hand. Reclaiming attention can be a kind of financial hygiene, a reset, a gentle audit, a way to pause and say, I see you, to each charge. Tonight, you don't have to cancel everything, just be aware. In the stillness, notice where your money travels without you. That awareness is a kind of wealth. Sleep now with lightness. Let automation serve you, not the other way around. Let your money move gently to only where it's meant to go. The end of cash, what we lose when we tap. The end of cash, what we lose when we tap. Now you tap or wave or scan, the transaction is done before you blink. No jingling change, no need for small talk, just a soft vibration or a beep. The rise of digital payments is efficient, but in its smoothness something has faded. The friction, the pause, the awareness of parting with something physical. Cash had ceremony. It made us count. It gave shape to budgets. It reminded us that money was finite and its flow could be felt. Without it, spending becomes abstract. The swipe doesn't sting the same, the total feels less real. Our sense of money changes when our fingers never touch it. Some people lose more than a ritual. The unbanked, the elderly, the rural, all rely on cash in ways the digital world doesn't always respect. The tap can exclude, not just simplify. And yet the move away from cash continues, coins vanish, ATMs grow rare. Even tips become QR codes quietly, an era ends. There is beauty in ease, but there is also peace in pause. Handling money used to slow us down. It asked us to notice. Nah, we often don't. So as you drift off tonight, remember what money used to feel like. The weight of a coin, the fold of a bill, the quiet honesty of exact change. Economies of fiction. How imaginary worlds mirror ours. In books, films, and games, money often moves in strange and fascinating ways. From space credits to dragon hordes, fictional economies mirror our real ones, sometimes closely, sometimes playfully. These worlds ask questions we forget to ask. What if gold had no value? What if a favor was worth more than a coin? What happens when trade is based on trust, not tokens? Fiction lets us observe systems without the weight of consequence. We see how scarcity creates tension, how control over resources builds power. how markets can be both engines and prisons. In fantasy worlds, wealth is often visible, castles, crowns, magical items, but it's also deeply emotional. Love, loyalty, and land can carry greater value than gold. Science fiction, too, explores currency, digital credits, barter systems, time as money. These ideas push us to imagine other paths forward, economies shaped by different rules, different hearts. Even in imagined worlds, inflation sneaks in, fortunes rise and fall, debts grow, and yet every fictional economy teaches us something about the one we live in, its fears, its desires, its limits. The act of creating a fictional economy is itself a kind of storytelling. Authors ask, what do these people need? What do they lack? What are they willing to trade for peace? In doing so, they reflect our own uncertainties, our myths about money, our hopes that someday we might get it right, build a system that feels more human, more just, more calm. As you fall asleep, think about a world where value isn't measured in dollars alone, a world shaped by kindness, by wonder, by stories that don't end in profit. Let those imagined economies soften your mind tonight. Let them make room for dreaming of systems that work not just for wealth, but for well-being. The quiet rise of universal income, rethinking support and flow. Imagine waking up and knowing that no matter what happens, your basic needs are covered. No paperwork, no questions, just a gentle monthly breath of support. This is the idea behind universal basic income, a regular payment for everyone, simply because they exist. Not a handout, but a floor, a soft place to stand. It's not new. Philosophers, economists, and dreamers have imagined it for centuries. A world where people don't survive by hustling, but by being alive. Some see it as a safety net, others as a launch pad. When money isn't the daily worrying, people study, rest, invent, care, and heal. Time expands when scarcity contracts. Trials have begun, quietly around the world. In villages, cities, and towns, people are being given money, freely, and the results speak. Less stress, more dignity, better sleep. It's not perfect. There are questions. How much, for whom will prices rise? But each test shows the same thing. People do not waste freedom, they build with it. We often think value must be earned through labor. But what if value also comes from potential, from breathing room, from trust? Universal income invites a different rhythm, one where life isn't a race against rent, where survival isn't tied to employment, where work becomes a choice, not a chain. As you rest tonight, imagine what it would feel like to trust that your needs will be met, to breathe without calculating, to dream without debt. Let that thought stay with you, a world where enough is possible, a future shaped not by fear, but by flow. Value without noise, a slower economy for a slower mind. In the rush of modern life, money moves fast. Notifications buzz, Prices flash, markets jump. It's a world tuned to urgency, not rest. But what if we slowed it down? What if our economy matched our need for silence, reflection, and space? A slower economy doesn't mean less. It means deliberate, sustainable, rooted in presence, not panic. It means small businesses over giant chains, quality over quantity, pause over impulse. It values the unseen, care work, listening, repair. It honors time that isn't billable, moments that aren't monetized. It recognizes that slowness, too, has worth. Imagine choosing fewer things, but things that last, supporting people, not platforms. Buying less often, but with deeper joy that is value without noise. In this slower world, money isn't king. It's companion. It moves with you, not against you. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It waits. We don't have to measure every action by what it earns. We can measure by what it offers. Peace, connection, trust, these currencies never lose value. Slowing down reveals abundance. We didn't know we had time, attention, breath. We don't need to consume more to feel whole. Sometimes we need to stop. Tonight you are enough. No transaction needed. No hustle required. Just rest, just stillness, just sleep. Money has always been more than coins, notes, or numbers on a screen. It is a mirror of what we value, what we fear, and what we hope to build. It runs through history like a quiet current, shaping lives, stories, and dreams. Through these soft facts, we've wandered across deserts where stones were currency, through temples that stored trust, and into futures built on digital breath. Each stop a reminder, money is not fixed, it adapts like us. We saw how wealth can rise in silence, how it can vanish without a sound, and how meaning often lingers longer than value. There is poetry in price tags, and patience in the shape of coins. We explored not only what money does, but what it means to earn, to save, to spend, to give. These are not just transactions. They are expressions of belief, of self, of connection. And now, as this journey slows, one thought remains. You are more than your earnings, more than what you've bought or not bought, more than what the world expects you to be. You are allowed to rest, even when work is unfinished. You are allowed to pause, even when the world keeps spinning. There is no invoice for peace. Close your eyes and feel the rhythm slow. No budgets to balance here, no spreadsheets or debts, only calm, soft ground beneath you. Let your thoughts settle like coins in a fountain. Let your body be heavy with safety. Let dreams come, not to solve anything, but to carry you gently elsewhere. And in this quiet, may you find deep sleep, the kind that costs nothing and gives everything back.